Hey guys, Yips here, coming with another video, and this is going to be a single target video guide on Malefic Grasp, Contagion, and Soul Effigy, okay? So I want to talk a little bit about why this build is so good, and then I'll get into how to do DPS, and after all of that, I'll talk about some sort of nuances that you can do to improve your DPS as this build relative to other Warlocks, okay? So, the reason that this build is so strong is it offers a lot of movement on single target and consistency. So, relative to the norm Absolute Corruption build, it not only offers more damage for a lot of Warlocks, it also offers more movement because you have that additional Corruption Global to be using as an instant to move your character about, okay? It also offers more consistency than the Soul Conduit build because having Agony on the boss and your Soul Effigy tends to be a higher number of Soul Shards on average than the Soul Conduit, okay? So it is a very consistent build, it is a very powerful build, it's probably going to give you the most DPS single target if you're playing correctly, but I will give it this, it is a very challenging build to run, it does take practice, so if you guys are looking to step up your Warlock gameplay, if you're looking to do a little bit better, but also challenge yourself just a little bit more, this is a build I recommend you guys trying. And I also want to talk about, that's it, that's all I want to talk about. Let's just get into how to do damage, and then we'll talk about the nuances of this build, okay? So, how to deal damage with this build. What you want to be doing is maintaining Agony, Corruption, and Siphon Life on the boss, and when you cast your Soul Effigy, you only ever want to be Agonying it, okay? You never want to put more than Agony on your Soul Effigy, as it has been determined putting Corruption and putting Siphon Life on your Soul Effigy is just a flat-out DPS loss. Those globals are not worth it relative to drain lifing the boss and getting that additional 70% dot damage, getting that additional uptime on the boss, okay? So, without further ado, let's just talk about doing single target damage. So, maintaining those 4 dots in a rotation is basically how you're going to be going about doing it. After you have those dots out, you want to cast 2 to 3 UAs. Most likely, you're going to have the resources to do 2 to 3 every single time. And when your dots are about to expire, you want to make sure that you're refreshing those, okay? Now, you always want to make sure that you're refreshing Corruption last, okay? Make sure you're refreshing Corruption last because, Corruption is a dot that you want lasting the longest on the target, so by refreshing it last, this just allows for the maximum time of Corruption to be on the boss during your drain cycles and during your contagion cycles relative to your other dots, okay? So this is generally how you're going to be wanting to go about this single target damage rotation. You see here, I'm just casting 2 to 3 UAs every single time on the boss, refreshing my dots once they start to get a little bit low, and going back and UAing the boss 2 to 3 times. Now, with regards to reap usage, you generally just want to be reaping whenever you have it. Whenever you're dumping 3 UAs on the boss is generally when I do it. Whenever you're able to stand still and actually turn on the boss, it's obviously going to be the best time for you to be using your reap stacks. So that covers the base single target rotation. I'm making it look pretty easy right now. It's not as easy as I'm making it look, but for the most part, you're just making sure you're draining your UAs off 100% and then just refreshing your dots and making sure that you're doing Corruption last, okay? So that's the base way to do damage with this build. This is going to net you quite a bit of DPS overall, just playing this way, getting these refreshes in. Now, with regards to the base rotation, there is some nuances that I want to talk about, okay? And the nuances that I want to talk about is how to incorporate 1 movement, 2 life tap, and 3 self-pandemicing into this build. And by incorporating these 3 key concepts into this build, it's really going to help you maximize your DPS. It's really going to bring you to the next level when it comes to playing Warlock. So let's just get into it. So with regards to movement, that's the first thing I'm going to talk about. With regards to movement, you want to make sure that on movement, you are prepping yourself for the next damage set, okay? You want to make sure that when you're moving, you're prepping yourself for your next rotation. So what I'm doing is, on a boss fight, like Croesus or something, I'm attacking the boss, okay? I'm attacking, getting my drain phase off. Oh gosh, all of a sudden I have to move. I'm just going to make sure I'm refreshing my dots early and just prepping for the next cycle, okay? I'm just making sure that once that movement mechanic has ended, so once I'm able to stop again, once I'm able to start DPSing the boss again, I have my max duration of all my dots already available for me, so that when I stop, I'm able to go in and start doing damage right away again, okay? So this is very important. Every single time that you're going to have to move, or if something random happens to where you're going to have to move, make sure that you're refreshing your dots, make sure that you're making sure to get those full pandemic timers for when you do end up stop moving, and this just allows you to continue with your damage rotation and keep up on your shard gen, okay? Obviously, it does hurt your DPS to stop Malefic grasping early. It does hurt your DPS to not be refreshing your dots properly, but you would rather move and not die than move and die and not be able to do damage anymore to the boss, right? So make sure that you're incorporating this to your gameplay when you're moving, making sure that you're refreshing your dots properly. Now, also make sure that you're life tapping if you're low on mana as well while you're moving, but that should be a pretty basic Warlock skill. If you want to be even a little more advanced on movement, you can also dot your soul effigy while you're moving around the room, refreshing your dots, but me personally as a Warlock, I just like to make sure that I have all my dots that I will have for my single target rotation refreshed so that when I stop moving, I'm able to just go about doing my base single target rotation once I have stopped, okay? Now, the next thing I want to talk about is life tap usage, okay? So with regards to using life tap on pure single target, the general times where you want to be life tapping is when either A, you're moving, but we've already covered that, or B, you're doing less damage than normal, okay? So when you're only dumping 2 UAs, after that drain cycle, that is usually when it's going to be beneficial for you to life tap on a boss. And the reason being it's going to be beneficial to you life tapping after only casting 2 UAs is because if I was like, to go about my single target rotation on the boss, and if I was to only cast 2 UAs, notice how long of a duration my dots have left on them after casting just 2 UAs, okay? So I cast these 2 UAs, I drain them completely off, my dots still have a very good duration on them, and this is going to allow me to life tap, okay? Now compare this to 3 UAs. Now I'm going to cast 3 UAs on the boss, okay, and then drain them. So 1, 2, and then 3. Notice how my dots are expiring a lot faster. Well, they're not actually expiring faster, you've just spent more time casting before you've gone about refreshing them, okay? So it's best to life tap after you've done a 2 UA cycle, okay? Obviously, if you're out of mana, you have to life tap, but in general, you kind of try to want to work around it when you are only dumping 2 UAs or on movement, okay? That's just going to be the optimal time for you to do it, simply because it's going to be a time where your dots are still on the boss, you're finished with your UA draining cycles, and this is the time where you're not doing a lot of damage. It's good for you to go ahead and throw a life tap in there, okay? So that is with regards to how to play with life tap. Now I want to talk about probably the most important part of the video, and this is self-pandemicing corruption, okay? Now, self-pandemicing corruption is something that I've implemented to this build myself. It makes it feel a lot smoother for me on pure standstill single target fights, and I want to talk a lot about why that is, and I also want to talk about how to do it, okay? So I want you guys to notice something, okay? If I dot the boss and then dot my soul effigy and go about the 3 unstable affliction or even 2 drain cycle, corruption falls off very quickly, okay? And now the reason corruption falls off extremely quickly is because it is the shortest duration dot that a warlock has, okay? Aside from unstable affliction. It only lasts 14 seconds compared to the other ones which last upwards of 17 seconds, okay? So the way you want to be managing this, and the way that I like to manage it on single target, is 1, you want to be refreshing corruption last, okay? That is the first thing. But after refreshing corruption last, there are actually some parts in the rotation where I'll refresh corruption twice, okay? And this happens at very specific moments. So after this rotation, I'll show you guys what I mean. So I'm refreshing my dots like normal here. Notice at the very end of my drain cycle, just before corruption ends, I will refresh it here, okay? So I'll go about my drain cycle, and just before corruption is about to be finished expiring, I'm going to refresh corruption, refresh my other dots on all the other targets. I'll refresh corruption again as to pandemic it up to the same duration of the other dots, and then I'll just go about my cycle. Okay, and now what this does is you'll see for my next 3 to 4 cycles, corruption will be on a great timer if I refresh it last like this, okay? So I'll refresh all my other dots, I'll refresh corruption here, it's pandemicked. Corruption is now pandemicked for the next 2 to 3 cycles, which means you don't have to worry about corruption falling off at the end of your drain cycles, okay? It even allows you to, refresh your dot, throw in a life tap here. It just saves you so much time. So see here, I'll refresh my corruption like normal. And when I go back to the draining rotation here, Corruption is going to be one of the first dots falling. Obviously, Siphon Life is falling here. But once I finish my drain cycle, if I refresh my Siphon Life, refresh my Agony, refresh my other Agony, and then refresh Corruption, now Corruption is on that 12-second timer again, and timing is going to be a little bit wonky. So now I want to be making sure this is where I'm going to be doing the double Corruption refresh again. So see here, Corruption is fading. I'm going to refresh it once, refresh my Siphon Life, Agony, I'm just going to throw in a life tap here for extra time, and then Pandemic my Corruption. And all this allows, and it just allows for more smooth cycles. It may not look more smooth, but the reason that it's more smooth is because your dots are falling off less frequently during your drain cycles, okay? Notice how every single time I'm doing these drain cycles, compared to before, when earlier in the video, my Corruption is actually staying on the target for the entire duration, okay? And that is something that self-pandemicing it really does. I really recommend a lot of you Warlocks try this. It's a very, very good thing to do. Here, you'll see I'll just refresh it at the regular time at the very end of the cast. So during this sort of a rotation, it's going to be falling off relatively soon again, and this is where I'm going to be double pandemicing it again. Okay, guys, so you see here, my Corruption is about to fall off. I'll refresh it once, refresh my other dots, and then I'll pandemic it just so I get a smoother rotation for the next couple of cycles, okay? So that's how you want to go playing this build. It's very, very efficient to be doing that. It's a very, very good thing to be doing on single target just to make your rotations go a little bit smoother. I hope you guys liked this video. I hope it showed you guys how to play this build just a little bit better, and I will see you guys next time.